My daughter called me a useless nobody. Now she's living in my house, broke and begging for help. She mocked me, insulted me, and tried to destroy my life. But karma has come, and now she's learning that respect, family, and justice can't be ignored. I never thought I'd tell this story out loud, but maybe it will help someone out there. Imagine your own child looking you in the eye and calling you a useless nobody. Now imagine years later, that same child knocking on your door, asking to move in because she had nowhere else to go. That's my life. That's my story. I'm a 67-year-old man, retired, living in the same little house I built with my own hands decades ago. My wife passed away 10 years back, so I've been mostly on my own. My daughter, let's call her Emily, grew up in this house. She was always ambitious, always chasing something bigger. I was proud of her for that, but over the years, her ambition turned into pride, and pride turned into contempt. Somewhere along the line, I stopped being her father and started being, in her words, an embarrassment. The real crack in our relationship came after her mother's funeral. We were all sitting at the kitchen table, and I tried to comfort her. She pushed my hand away and snapped, "You're nothing without Mom. You're just a weak old man. Honestly, you're a burden." I can still hear those words. They cut me deeper than any knife ever could. From that day, she barely called, rarely visited, and when she did, she made sure to remind me how small my life was. But here's the twist. Life has a way of flipping the table. Just last year, Emily's marriage collapsed. Her husband left her for a younger woman. She lost their fancy house, most of their savings, and to top it off, she had 2 teenagers who didn't want to live with her. Suddenly, Miss, I'm too good for this old shack, was at my front door, suitcase in hand, eyes red from crying. I stood there, staring at her. My daughter, the same one who called me worthless, was asking me for shelter. "Dad, I don't have anywhere else to go. Please. Just until I get back on my feet." My heart twisted in that moment. Part of me wanted to slam the door. Another part of me saw the little girl she once was, standing in the doorway, begging for comfort after scraping her knee. I let her in. At first, things were polite. She stayed quiet, cleaned up after herself, even cooked a few meals. I thought maybe life had humbled her. But pride doesn't vanish that easily. Soon enough, she started complaining. The house was too small. The furniture was outdated. One night, I overheard her on the phone saying, "I feel like I'm living with some broke old man who doesn't know how to move on." I wanted to laugh and cry all at once. Yes, she was living with a broke old man. But it was this broke old man who put a roof over her head when no one else would. The tension grew week by week. She wanted me to dip into my retirement savings to help her buy a new car. She wanted me to hand over the upstairs bedroom so she could have space for herself. She even suggested I should sell the house, my home, so we could move somewhere nicer. That was my breaking point. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Emily, this house is mine. I built it. I'll die in it. If it's not good enough for you, you're free to leave." She gasped like I'd slapped her. "How can you say that to your own daughter?" she hissed. I stayed calm, but my heart was pounding. How could you say I'm a burden? How could you call me worthless? Yet here you are, under my roof. The room went silent. For once, Emily had no comeback. And that's where I'll pause this story. Because what happened next turned everything upside down. You see, karma wasn't finished with Emily yet, and the way justice found her, even I couldn't have predicted. After that night of silence, something shifted between us. Emily stopped speaking to me for 2 whole days. She stomped around the house, slamming doors, sighing loudly, as if I was the villain for standing up for myself. Honestly, it felt like I was living with a teenager again, not a grown woman in her 40s. On the 3rd evening, I walked into the kitchen and found her sitting at the table with papers spread out everywhere. Bills, court documents, letters from the bank. She looked exhausted. I asked quietly, "Emily, what's going on?" She threw the papers at me. "This is what's going on, Dad. I'm drowning. I have nothing. The bank is after me, I've got debt collectors calling every hour, and my kids won't even return my texts. And what do I get from you? A lecture about respect." Her voice cracked, and for a moment, I saw the broken, scared woman behind all that pride. I sat down across from her and picked up one of the letters. She owed tens of thousands. Credit cards maxed out, loans unpaid. Her ex-husband had left her with more than just heartbreak, he left her with financial ruin. Emily, I said slowly, I can't pay these for you. I worked my whole life to save just enough for retirement. If I give that away, I'll have nothing to survive on. She glared at me, eyes blazing. So you'd rather see your daughter on the street than help me? Those words cut deep, but I kept my voice steady. I gave you a roof. I gave you food. That's help. But I can't be your bank. You need to face this yourself. That night, she cried in her room. I heard her sobbing through the thin walls. And I'll admit, it broke me a little. No matter how cruel she had been, she was still my child. I wanted to fix it all for her, but I knew that if I did, she'd never learn. The following week, things took a darker turn. Emily started rummaging through my belongings. I caught her in my study one morning, going through my drawers. When I asked what she was doing, she snapped, I was just looking for a pen. But I noticed my checkbook sitting half pulled out. That was the moment I realized, desperation was eating her alive. And desperation can make family betray you. A few days later, I got a call from my neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins. She said she saw Emily talking to a man in a car parked outside late at night. Looks shady, she whispered. Just be careful. When I confronted Emily about it, she rolled her eyes. Oh my God, Dad, stop listening to gossip. I was just catching up with an old friend. But something about the way she said it didn't sit right. That weekend, the truth exploded. I came home from the grocery store and found Emily in the living room, phone in hand, screaming into the speaker. You promised me. You said you'd have the money. What am I supposed to do now? When she noticed me, her face went pale. She hung up quickly and tried to smile. But I wasn't stupid. Who was that? I demanded. Nobody. Just a friend. I stared at her. Were you trying to borrow money behind my back? Or worse, were you planning to use my name for a loan? Her silence told me everything. That night, I locked away my important documents. Birth certificate, house deed, bank statements, all of it went into a metal box in my closet. I wasn't going to let my own daughter ruin me. The tension in the house grew unbearable. She avoided me during the day but slammed cabinets at night, making her anger loud. I kept reminding myself, patience. This was my home. I wasn't the one who needed to leave. Then came the breaking point. One morning, I woke up to the sound of voices in the kitchen. Emily wasn't alone. A man was sitting at my table, mid-30s, rough around the edges, tattoos crawling up his neck. He looked at me like I was an intruder in my own house. Dad, this is Rick, Emily said nervously. He's helping me with some things. I crossed my arms. What kind of things? Rick smirked. Business. Don't worry about it, old man. That was it. My patience snapped. Get out, I said firmly. Both of you. Right now. Emily jumped up, furious. You can't just kick me out. I'm your daughter. I raised my voice for the first time in years. And you can't bring strangers into my home without my permission. This is my house, Emily. Not yours. Rick stood up slowly, towering over me. Relax, old man. We're just talking. But I wasn't afraid. I looked him straight in the eye and said, Get out before I call the police. He muttered something under his breath and walked out. Emily stayed behind, trembling with rage. How could you embarrass me like that? She shouted. I answered with the truth. How could you betray me like this? You've been lying, sneaking around, trying to use me. Enough is enough, Emily. If you want to stay here, you follow my rules. Otherwise, the door is open. She stormed off, slamming her bedroom door so hard the walls shook. That night, I barely slept. My heart was heavy. I wanted to protect her, but she was making it impossible. And deep down, I knew, this wasn't the end of it. Because when pride, debt, and desperation mix, disaster is never far behind. And disaster was about to hit my home in a way I could never have imagined. The morning after the confrontation with Rick, the house felt heavier than usual. I made my coffee and sat by the window, staring at the yard. Birds chirped, the sun shone, but inside, I felt a storm brewing. Emily didn't come out of her room. I knocked gently. Emily, breakfast is ready, I said. No answer. By noon, I heard the muffled sound of crying. This time, it wasn't just tears, it was panic. I rushed into her room. She was sitting on the floor, knees pulled to her chest, phone clutched tightly. What's wrong? I asked softly. She shook her head. It's everything, Dad. I can't do this anymore. I knelt beside her. Emily, you've been through a lot. But hiding and panicking won't fix anything. Let me help you. She looked at me, eyes red and swollen. Help me? After everything I've said about you? After everything I've done? You don't even hate me? I shook my head. I may be hurt, Emily. I may be angry. But you're still my daughter. That doesn't change. For a moment, she just cried, and I sat there quietly. But then she whispered, I don't know if I can survive this. I've lost everything, my husband, my house, my pride, and now I feel like I've lost you too. Her words were like a punch to the gut. I realized that maybe, just maybe, this was the turning point. I had to be firm, but I also had to guide her. Over the next few days, I made her do something she hated, face reality. We went through her bills together, her debts, her bank accounts. I refused to sugarcoat anything. This is your responsibility, Emily. Not mine. I'm here to help you survive, not to bail you out. She groaned and rolled her eyes, muttering, I hate this. I hate being an adult. I laughed softly. Welcome to life, sweetheart. It's hard, messy, and sometimes cruel. But hiding won't change that. Then came the real test. One morning, I found a notice on the counter. The landlord of her old apartment was taking her to court over unpaid rent. Emily froze when she saw it. I don't know what to do. I looked at her, calm but stern. You do what you should have done weeks ago. You pay what you can, negotiate what you can't, and you own up to it. That's the only way forward. Emily groaned but nodded reluctantly. She started making phone calls, writing emails, apologizing. I watched her transform in front of my eyes, slowly, painfully, but steadily. The next shock came when Rick returned. I found him sitting in the living room, smug as ever. Thought we could talk, he said, grinning. I didn't even flinch. You're not welcome here, I said. Emily stepped forward. Dad, maybe we should just hear him out. I turned to her, eyes blazing. No. He's the reason you're in this mess. You don't need him. You need to stand on your own. Her face fell, and for the first time, I saw doubt in her eyes. Maybe you're right. Rick left that day, but Emily's struggle was far from over. She had to navigate her debts, her broken relationships, and most importantly, her pride. And pride is hard to swallow, especially when you've spent years looking down on the very person who helped you. One evening, she came to me, tears streaming. Dad, I can't believe I did all those things. I was so cruel to you. I treated you like nothing. And now I see how wrong I was. I looked at her, heart full. Emily, it takes courage to admit that. But actions matter more than words. What are you going to do about it? She wiped her eyes. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to work, pay my debts, be a mother for my kids, and I want to start with apologizing to you properly. We sat together at the kitchen table, and for the first time in years, she thanked me. Really thanked me. Not for money, not for shelter, but for standing by her when no one else would. But the final test wasn't just about apologies. It came in the form of her ex-husband, who tried to manipulate her again, claiming she owed him money. I had warned her. I told her to stay firm, and for the first time, she did. She didn't run to me, she didn't cry to him, she stood up for herself. I watched her gain strength, piece by piece. And every time she succeeded, every time she refused to bend to threats or lies, I felt a deep satisfaction. This was the Emily I had always hoped she'd be, not the arrogant, prideful child, but a woman who could survive and thrive, even in the face of betrayal. The house, which had once been filled with tension, now felt lighter. We cooked together, laughed occasionally, and even shared stories from the past. Emily started to clean more, cook more, and even let me help her with her kids. She was slowly learning respect, not just for me, but for herself. But life has a way of testing even the strongest lessons. One day, I discovered she had been secretly applying for a big inheritance from a distant relative, hoping to solve her money problems in one swoop. It wasn't illegal, but it wasn't the way I wanted her to solve her problems either. I confronted her gently. Emily, I know about the inheritance. Why didn't you tell me? She looked down, ashamed. I thought I could fix everything at once. I didn't want you to worry. I sighed. I understand. But life doesn't work that way. You have to earn your way, not wait for luck or family money. She nodded, realizing her mistake. And I knew, deep down, that these struggles were shaping her into the person she was meant to become. And that's when I realized the truth. Sometimes, children have to fall all the way down before they can learn to stand tall again. But just when it seemed like we were finally on stable ground, another twist hit, one that would shake our fragile peace and test everything we had built together. The days that followed were quiet at first, almost peaceful. Emily was settling into a routine. She took her kids to school, worked part-time jobs, and handled bills with more confidence than ever before. I thought, maybe, just maybe, we had finally reached a truce. But life has a cruel sense of timing. One evening, as I was reading in the living room, I heard Emily's voice raised. I dropped my book and hurried to the kitchen. She was on the phone, shouting, "You think you can just take the kids away? No. You have no right." Her voice cracked, and my heart sank. I recognized that tone, the mix of fear, anger, and desperation. After she hung up, I asked gently, "What happened?" Her face was pale, and she was trembling. "It's my ex. He's trying to take the kids. He said if I don't pay him the money I owe, he'll get custody. I don't know what to do." I felt a surge of protective anger. This man had already destroyed her life once, and now he wanted her children too? I took a deep breath and said, "Emily, calm down. We will fight this. You're not alone." She looked at me, disbelief written all over her face. You're actually on my side?" I nodded. "I've always been on your side. Even when you didn't see it. Even when you treated me like I was nothing, I never stopped being your father." That night, we sat together, mapping out a plan. Legal advice, evidence, witness statements. It was overwhelming for Emily, but I guided her every step. And as we worked side by side, something remarkable happened. Her pride, which had once made her cruel, now fueled her determination. 2 weeks later, we were in court. Emily was pale and nervous, but she held her head high. I sat beside her, holding her hand, giving her the silent strength she needed. The ex-husband strutted in, confident, smug. He thought he had her cornered. The judge called the case, and the ex-husband started talking about debts, unpaid bills, and his right to custody. Emily's voice trembled at first, but then she took a deep breath. "Your Honor," she began, "I have done everything I can to provide for my children. I have faced financial ruin, personal betrayal, and yet I stand here, committed to them. My father has helped me survive when I had nowhere else to go, and I will not let my children be taken from me." Her words rang out in the courtroom, clear and firm. The ex-husband scoffed, trying to interrupt, but the judge raised a hand. "Let her finish," he said. Emily continued, detailing the support she received from me, the steps she had taken to repay debts, and her efforts to maintain stability for her kids. I watched her transform before my eyes, from the arrogant, prideful woman who had once mocked me, to a determined mother who knew her worth and was ready to fight for it. When she finished, the room was silent. The ex-husband looked furious, but powerless. The judge reviewed the documents, listened to our arguments, and finally made a decision. Custody would remain with Emily. He would have visitation rights, but the children would stay with their mother. Emily sank into my shoulder, tears streaming down her face. I did it, Dad. We did it." I hugged her tightly. "Yes. And you learned something important. You're stronger than you thought." But the drama didn't end there. After the courtroom, the ex-husband tried one last move. He threatened to expose Emily's financial troubles publicly, hoping to ruin her reputation. But Emily didn't panic this time. She came to me, and together we confronted him with legal notices and evidence showing his attempts at manipulation. By the end of the week, he backed down completely, humiliated and powerless. The house, once a battlefield of pride and resentment, now felt like a sanctuary. Emily no longer sneered or complained. She cleaned without being asked, cooked without comment, and even started teaching her kids the lessons she had learned: respect, responsibility, and resilience. One night, I caught her in the living room, sitting quietly, staring at an old photo of her mother. I joined her and said softly, "You've grown so much, Emily. I'm proud of you." She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw humility in her eyes. "I'm sorry for everything," she whispered. "For the years I hated you, for the things I said. You were always there for me, and I didn't see it." I held her hand. "It's done. What matters now is that we move forward. Together." And in that moment, I realized the truth about family. It's messy, it's painful, but it can also be the greatest source of redemption. The following weeks were filled with small victories. Emily found a steady job, began paying off her debts, and rebuilt her relationship with her children. She even started taking care of the house as if it were her own, because, in a way, it finally was. I watched her transformation and felt a quiet satisfaction. Justice had been served, not through revenge, but through resilience, courage, and the lessons of hardship. Emily had learned respect, responsibility, and the true meaning of family. And as I sit here now, looking at her laughing with her children in the yard, I can't help but smile. Karma has a funny way of teaching lessons, and in the end, those who once underestimated others often find themselves humbled. The road was long, the battles were fierce, and the pain was real. But through it all, one thing remained: love, patience, and the unyielding bond between a father and his daughter. Sometimes, the people who call you worthless are the ones who need to learn the hardest lessons. And sometimes, the people who seemed proud and cruel become the strongest and most grateful. Emily had fallen, yes, but she had risen higher than I could have imagined. And for the first time in years, our home felt like a place of peace, laughter, and most importantly, respect. The storm had passed. And justice, sweet, undeniable justice, had finally arrived. The weeks after the courtroom battle were quieter, but they weren't without challenges. Emily had won, yes, but winning isn't the same as healing. She had to learn to live with the consequences of her actions, the pride she had lost, and the trust she had broken. And I had to learn to forgive, not just her, but myself for letting years of resentment grow in silence. Emily began each day with a new routine. She worked long hours, cooked meals for her kids, and slowly paid off her debts. I watched her transformation from the sidelines, quietly proud. She was no longer the woman who sneered at my old furniture or mocked my retirement savings. She was diligent, careful, and most importantly, humble. One evening, I returned home from a small town council meeting, something I did occasionally to stay involved with the community, and found Emily in the living room, her children curled up next to her, reading. She looked up and smiled softly. "Dad, can we talk?" I sat down. "Of course, Emily. What's on your mind?" She took a deep breath, her hands shaking slightly. "I've been thinking about everything. About how I treated you all those years. About the words I said, the anger, the pride. I was so wrong. I thought I was too good for this house, too good for you. But I see now. I was nothing without you. Literally nothing." Her words caught in my throat. I swallowed hard and said, "Emily, it's not about being too good. We all make mistakes. What matters is how we correct them." She nodded, tears glistening. "I want to make it right. I want my kids to see what respect looks like. I want to be someone they can look up to. And I want to be someone you can be proud of." I reached across the table and took her hand. "You already are, Emily. You just had to find your way here." From that day, things changed completely. Emily took full responsibility for her life. She refused to ask for more than she needed, she worked hard, and she treated me with genuine respect. She even started helping her neighbors, teaching her children kindness, empathy, and resilience. One afternoon, I came home to find her baking bread, the smell filling the kitchen. She smiled as I entered. "I wanted to do something for you," she said. "For everything." It was a simple gesture, but it meant the world. I realized then that true reconciliation isn't about grand gestures, it's about the little things, the everyday acts of love and respect. Then came an unexpected surprise. Emily had been quietly applying for scholarships and grants to continue her education. She was accepted into a program for social work, something I knew she had always wanted to pursue but never had the courage to. She told me, I want to help people, Dad. I want to be someone who makes a difference, just like you always tried to teach me. I felt tears well up. Emily, I'm proud of you. Truly. As the months went by, our home became a place of laughter again. Emily and her children created routines, celebrated small victories, and learned the value of hard work. I watched them, heart full, knowing that the storms of the past had shaped us into something stronger. One evening, she came to me with a small envelope. Inside was a letter from her ex-husband, the man who had tried to destroy her. He admitted defeat, acknowledged his mistakes, and agreed to comply with all court orders. Emily smiled faintly. Karma, she whispered. I chuckled softly. It's not about karma, Emily. It's about standing your ground and doing what's right. Justice doesn't always come quickly, but it comes if you don't give up. She nodded, understanding the truth of that. And in that moment, I felt a profound sense of closure. The daughter who once called me a useless nobody had grown into a woman of courage, humility, and strength. And the bond between us, tested by betrayal, pride, and desperation, had emerged unbroken. We spent the next year rebuilding not just our lives, but our family. Emily's children thrived in a stable, loving environment. Emily herself flourished in her new career path. And I found peace in knowing that despite the pain, the insults, and the struggles, I had remained steadfast, patient, and loving. One evening, as we sat together in the living room, I reflected on everything. You know, Emily, I said softly, life has a way of teaching the hardest lessons to the people who think they already know everything. And sometimes, it takes hitting rock bottom to realize what truly matters. She looked at me, eyes shining. I know now, Dad. I know what matters. Family, respect, responsibility, and love. I'll never forget it. That night, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, contentment. Not just because the battles were over, but because the lessons had been learned, the wrongs had been righted, and justice, real, meaningful justice, had been served. The moral of our story is simple. Pride and arrogance can blind even the closest family members. Life will test you, sometimes harshly, and sometimes painfully. But love, patience, and steadfastness have a way of breaking through the hardest hearts. Emily had once called me a nobody, but in the end, it was my steadfastness, my patience, and my refusal to give up on her that saved our family. She had learned respect, responsibility, and humility. And I had learned that even the harshest storms can bring the most beautiful calm. Our home, once a battleground, had become a sanctuary. And in that sanctuary, a father and his daughter finally found peace, laughter, and most importantly, a mutual understanding that would never again be broken. Because in the end, justice is not always about punishment. Sometimes, it's about growth, redemption, and the quiet triumph of love over arrogance and pride. And that, my friends, is the story of how my daughter, the same one who once called me a useless nobody, came to live under my roof, fall, rise, and finally understand the true meaning of family, respect, and forgiveness.